Hello, and welcome to the Next Steps Summit. In this segment, I have the pleasure of interviewing Cleona O'Connell, who is a healer and has an interesting journey to doing the work that she is doing now in the world with alchemy and divine light. Thank you for being here today, Cleona.
Thank you for inviting me, Alistair. It's a great pleasure to be here.
I am excited to share you with the viewers today. I wonder if you would start by just sharing your journey to being a somatic therapist and how you came to be the healer that you are today.
Okay, so I moved to Devon because I wanted to get out of London, and I just happened to come across this advert for counseling training, and I decided that I was really interested in that and I wanted to go and explore what that was all about. So I ended up doing this for 2 years, in fact. I ended up doing level 2, 3, and the diploma level of counseling, which was a very major journey into self-discovery and self-evolution, because everything it wasn't just academic, it was embodied. Everything, we had all these lessons, everything that we were going to do with our clients we experienced ourselves. So it was a very deep dive into I'd already done a lot of spiritual work, but this was a very deep dive in. So, and then after I finished the counseling training, I wanted to include more trauma therapy, because we hadn't included trauma, wasn't really part of the training so much. So I trained with Babette Rothschild in London and in Ireland. It was taken in several pieces in different places. Excuse me. And then I started using this somatic trauma therapy with clients, and mainly the first step, calming techniques. And I found a way that actually didn't just work for trauma, but it's for stress, anxiety, and trauma. So I used it I was working for 2 years in this drop-in center for young children in Turkey, a seaside town here, where there was a lot of kind of difficult situations and people in poverty, and a lot of drug abuse and various things. They were had lots of problems, but it was mainly for under 21-year-olds. So I loved that, and I found that using these calming techniques for stress, anxiety, and trauma work with all of those young people that I work with, and I work with quite a lot during the 2-year period. So then it was really ingrained in me, to use that work. And then I did also do some trainings for other therapists on just that piece of the somatic trauma therapy training, which Babette had given her recommendation. She said, "You just go ahead, do this." So I taught like a 4-hour training on calming techniques for stress, anxiety, and trauma using. I'd also experienced by that point 2 car accidents, which made the training in somatic trauma therapy take a long time, basically, because Babette wanted me to be totally grounded and happy and healed. So I did that with those young people, and then I did it in Totnes, where I was living, and then I was guided to move out of Totnes and go to Stroud, which I wanted to explore a different part of the country, and somewhere where I felt it was a bit more grounded and a bit more business orientated than Totnes, which is very much people are on their spiritual journey, and there's a lot of different therapies there, but I felt it wasn't very grounded. So I wanted to go somewhere where it felt a bit more business orientated and people were making a living from offering their skills. So when I was there, I was very strongly guided again by my spirit guides to set up my own business as a tantric practitioner, which is something I'd done before, something that's mentioned in my book, and something that is about the combination of sexuality and spirit. which I felt was really needed then. And I just had this real calling, which so kind of came out of nowhere, and it took me a while to uncover what it actually meant and how that would manifest. But I started seeing clients for helping them with their sexual issues or problems that they had in that area, and how to bring the spirituality into their current experience of their sex lives, which was to bring spirit in any way or form is a real blessing. And I loved being able to do that and help people, would be so ashamed, and to bring in acceptance of over these kind of wounds that was very heartwarming, and just I saw people really blossoming. So I really enjoyed that. I loved it. I mean, I really was passionate about it at the beginning for a long while, until I realized eventually, after 3 years or so, that people were not really the mainstream. My clients were shifting, but the mainstream expectations and the people who wanted to see me were not the kind of clients I wanted to be seeing. And in the mainstream, I had kind of got a tainted image of what Tantra was about, and it just didn't work for me anymore. So I wanted to kind of finish that work. And at the same time, my guides had been saying to me, in fact, quite a lot sooner than I obeyed the command, because I was very comfortable by then. Yeah, I had a nice house in a nice place, and I was, had this, flourishing business. But they said, you have to end this and you have to go. And it wasn't quite clear where I was supposed to be going. So obviously that made me quite scared. And then I had a final client who came in, and he said after I'd given him a treatment, and then he asked me afterwards. He said, "Look, I need to tell you something. I need to say something to you." And I'm like, "Okay," expecting him to say, "Thank you so much. That was really, really amazing." But he actually just started speaking in Welsh. I mean, I don't speak Welsh. I may come from Ireland, but I don't understand Welsh. And he told me later on it was Old Welsh, which would be, it was like a foreign language, basically, that I didn't understand. Although I couldn't understand the words that he was saying, something in my body understood. And I felt a kind of like clunks inside me. Something was landing in a way that I didn't really understand. So I wanted him to leave. I mean, of course, the session ended, and I was happy to say goodbye to him and get him out the door. And then I just after I cleared up from the session, I kind of went, I just got on my bed, and I just started bawling my eyes out, and I didn't understand what was going on, and why is this happening. But it just came, these words came: "This is not your land, these are not your people, go to Ireland for 6 months." I mean, guidance never comes like this. It's never so clear. But something to do with the fact of this recitation of ancient Welsh, and like went into my psyche somewhere. Said, "Get a small cottage by the sea for 6 months and write a book." So that was and I just thought, this isn't happening. For 2 days, I kind of ignored it and didn't do anything. And then I thought, oh my God, it's really clear. It's really clear. I couldn't have got any clearer guidance. I have to go. And I didn't know where. And so I gave him my notice to my landlord, which I really didn't want to do, because I really loved where I was living. And I loved that house, and he'd been the best landlord ever. So it was great reluctance I did that. And then I started selling things and letting go of things and taking things to charity, and my whole place started disintegrating around me. This home I'd had so much joy in furnishing suddenly was disappearing. And I didn't know what was going on. So maybe I have to backtrack a little bit then, because I reached out to my go-to healer by that point to help me at this point. And then I just tell you why she became my go-to healer is this woman, Swan Montague. I'd from 2018, I'd been suffering from bouts of chronic fatigue, what I called chronic fatigue. And I was in bed, and like you couldn't get up and didn't have the energy and just couldn't get on with my life. And then it would go, or I would have a shamanic healing session and it would go, and I get on with my life again. But then it kept coming back. And after having 3 or 4 shamanic healing sessions, it became apparent that wasn't the right way to deal with this. So I sought out someone else, which is when I found Swan Montague, which is I met in a party in Stroud, and I kind of ignored her until I had this another flare up again, and I thought I've got to treat this in a different way. And I called her up, and she said, um, you have entities and curious spirits around, and you have too many guides, and your energy fields are like your etheric field is like 30 meters out, and your astral field is so far out I can't even find it. And that is the reason that you're exhausted. So, but it's not like we can just bring it all in one session. You're going to need 10 sessions over a fortnight, and it's going to be this price. And because I had some savings put aside, and I'd never heard anyone explain it like that before, and it seemed like she had this eagle view of everything, and I just thought, oh my goodness, she's the one I want to work with. So I signed up, and we did 10 sessions, and I was quite well, maybe about like 7 sessions, and by the end of it I was so well. I threw away all my supplements. I didn't need any supplements, any kind. I had more energy than I'd ever had. I felt more capable than I'd ever been in my whole life. And I just felt like rock solid and like the best I'd ever been in terms of my health. So, and also it wasn't just my health, but the sessions she gave to me were also spiritually evolving me at the same time, because when you clear the shadow within, then light can flow in and fills you up and begins this enlightening process. It says the process to enlightenment, but I mean that wasn't what we were there for. It wasn't the remit. It wasn't why I wanted her to help me, but it was a kind of byproduct of it. Or actually, she would say in the end that the main process that was about spiritual evolution, and it was a side benefit that you also got physical issues healed. You can look at it in either way. So so then coming back to present day, which was 2019, in like October, November, December period, when I was then trying to leave the country, and not with any idea. Well, I mean, I knew I was supposed to go to Ireland, but I really didn't want to go to Ireland in December. If anyone out there knows Ireland and knows what it's like in December, it's just rain all the time, and it's cold, it's freezing. And I didn't know why had to go there, and why could I not go somewhere a bit more pleasant if I'm just going to be writing a book. And a friend of mine said, why don't you go to Greece? And I thought, well, that sounds like an amazing idea, but I don't know if I'm allowed to ignore my guidance, so much. So I got in touch with Swan, and she said, I never thought you were meant to go to Ireland anyway. Which kind
Oh
of
my,
just like, yeah, I mean, wow. And I'm so happy you said that. I just thought I was on this kind of life sentence and I had to go. And she goes, no, there's many other places you could go. And over another couple of sessions, we kind of worked it out where would be the best place for me to go. And one of the things she suggested was France. And then I knew Mary Magdalene was one of the most strong spiritual guides I had while doing the Tantra work. And yeah, I wanted to go to France. I wanted to go to her sacred sites. I wanted to go on this Magdalene journey, and I wanted to start in Chartres. So that's what I did. That's what I did. Yeah, so I didn't go to Ireland in the end, and I didn't have a fixed destination. I just knew that France was the first place. And then I started writing my book. But anyway, that's a long answer to one question.
oh my goodness. That is so interesting. I have so many questions in my mind that I think would just take us down a rabbit hole where we would be talking possibly for days. Your guides, in. Seriously, your guides coming in. I mean, how does that even happen? I myself am curious about how to connect with guides. I mean, inner guidance, yes, blah blah blah. I'm sure that maybe the work that you're doing now is helping people make these connections within themselves. And I'm just commenting on the things that you've said. Um, so that's a long journey, and you end up in France and you
Well,
start
no,
writing your
in France.
you began in France.
I begin my pilgrimage in
You
France.
perfect. And so maybe this is an excellent segue where you can talk about your pilgrimage and awakening and this book that has come from the work that happened after you followed your guidance. We interviewed somebody yesterday who talked about the etheric field and the astral field and the mental field and the
Ah,
causal field. And so I love that you brought that in and how you were so open that there was too much happening, and so bringing that all back together, and maybe you'll discuss that a little bit as you talk now about your pilgrimage.
yeah. Well, so it wasn't easy to get out of England, to let go of England, and things kept cropping up until the last minute, with like, dental work that needed doing and all of these things that, you just normally don't think about. But I didn't know when I was coming. Well, I thought I was coming back in 6 months. But life had a different plan for me. Well, I started in Chartres, as I said, and then that was an incredible illumination experience. Like Swan recommended to me to go a special place in this cathedral in France, in the city of Chartres, to go and sit. And I was completely um divine light started pouring through the whole of my body and recalibrating different parts of me into my womb, and it was like the entirety of my body was filled with light and luminescence, kind of pulsating and vibrating and ricocheting around and like going through the whole of my body for as long as I could stay there. And it was hard to be there because it was absolutely freezing in this cathedral in December, in France, in the north of France. So it was hard to be there, but I was gone. My mind was gone. And after a while, I kind of came to and realized that my feet were like blocks of ice, and I really had to get out and go and warm up somewhere. And then I managed to stagger home, and still my brain wasn't working, and I managed to get back to the Airbnb that I was staying in and warm up finally. And that was just the beginning of my pilgrimage, like the first few days.
I'm curious if I could ask a question here. Has that ever happened to you one time when it's pouring in, or
Has
was
it
that a new
ever happened that
experience?
light been pouring into me like that?
Was that your first experience with light pouring in?
Of that to that extent, I mean, during the healings that I'd received from Swan, she didn't call her healing divine light healing. She didn't call it anything actually. She just called it intuitive healing. Really, I'd experienced light because she was working with the divine feminine energy, and now because we've got so much imbalance in the planet with the shadow masculine having taken everything down this, to the pollution and destruction of the planet, it's so needed to bring balance back and harmony to the planet that the divine feminine needs to come in. So she was working with divine feminine energy, and that came in as light. I just knew that I was having kind of feeling lighter and more in the end joyful, but lighter in my body, and all these this uh shaking and the trembling that had taken me into chronic fatigue, these traumas that had I thought burned out my adrenals, um were healed, and that was all doing this kind of light healing that she'd done to me. But never had I ever, I mean, this was like 1,000 times stronger than any one of her sessions. Just unbelievably incredible experience. So I was very grateful to the divine feminine for appearing to me in such a luminous and beautiful way. So yeah, so then I spent some days integrating that, and eventually I traveled down to um, Pyrenees, where I met a friend of mine who'd invited me to see his place, which was beautiful and freezing. And then Swan had recommended to me, did you ever think about Lourdes? I mean, I've never been there, but and I checked in with my guides and they were like, yes, yes, you definitely have to go there. So I went to Lourdes next, and it's an incredible. I don't know why I had this idea it was going to be somewhere small when there's millions of pilgrims every year. But when I was there, it was still in December. It was there were not so many people there as there usually were, and I find myself in a small chapel up above the main basilica down below. And in there it was warm, and it was amazing to receive the divine feminine again. The same level of energy that I had received in Chartres was coming to me through the statue of the Madonna in this little chapel in Lourdes, filling me, and just again the same sensations. Whereas in Chartres it'd been more in my root chakra, and here in Lourdes it was more in my heart chakra. So it was a slightly different vibration of energy that was coming in, but again it was the same. And I wanted to stay there for hours, but I had a journey. I was heading off to the next place, so I couldn't stay for very long. I hadn't booked in days and days there, like Swan had advised me in Chartres to spend at least 3 days. I hadn't taken that. I hadn't realized I should do that for Lourdes. Anyway, I had another amazing experience there. And then I went to Pézenas, which is a beautiful creative town for Christmas, where I met up with Swan and we spent Christmas together. And then I traveled on then I had a car break-in while I was in Pézenas. My car got broken into, like intrusive, and they hadn't stolen everything because I'd my Airbnb hosts and hostess had advised me to park the car on the main road, and if it was on the main road it should be empty. But the day before I left, I'd forgotten about that, and I started packing the car and then put it out on the road, intending to finish packing it the next day, but that was not to be. And so they stole the headphones and all the IT stuff I had, all the cables and things, and my spare mobile phone, among other things. But yeah, in the end, I got everything back on insurance, but not the headphones that I'd brought from my DJing equipment, which is another string to my bow. I'm trained open floor dance teacher. It's for a type of conscious dance, mindfulness and movement. So I had brought them with me. So then, yeah, it was obviously very disturbing and very upsetting. And then I had an ear infection happening at the same time, and I just couldn't work out what was going on. I'd been so well and everything had been so good, and then suddenly things were not looking so good. So I got in touch with Swan. I was on the south coast of France by this point, near what's it called? Le Gros Roi. And so yeah, I had a telephone conversation or a healing with her, and she said, well, you can't expect to be going to these places of great illumination and for shadow not to show up. And I'm like, oh no, oh no, nobody told me about this. I didn't sign up for this. I don't know anything about this. I don't want this shadow. And she said, well, I don't know if I want to spoil the whole story in the book, to be honest. But it was, there was something really quite deep and disturbing that needed to be resolved. And then so yeah, so I did that, and carried on going through the Magdalene sites in up in near Marseille. There was the cave of Magdalene there, and the Basilica of Magdalene that had the skull of Magdalene in there, purported to be the skull of Mary Magdalene, I mean, I felt really strong energy in both of these places, like very, very strong divine feminine energy. So I believe that, you know, it was there, but quite different experiences in the I don't want to spoil the whole story. So I am going to just skip on a bit, and yeah, eventually I ended up in Italy and trained with Swan to do her technique, because it had helped me so much with healing from my chronic fatigue, or this burnout that I had from the car accidents and the adrenaline running all the time. So yeah, it was amazing. I had this extreme blessing of being on this retreat almost on my own, and in this beautiful palatial villa in yeah, in Italy. And there, over the period of about 1 month, and we split it up into segments, and I integrated a lot, so it wasn't like I was training for a whole month, but then there was a lot of working on myself and going through different processes, and using her technique, which was using words. Uh, um, yeah, I don't want to, I mean, we don't have time to go into everything in great detail,
Yeah.
but it came at the end of that session, at the end of that process, that healing, it was called the Sacred Order of Light, Energy and Information 17. That was the technique that she taught me, and she still does teach this to other people. So I need to speed up. Anyway, so that's the pilgrimage that happened in you know, it's the book is written about my pilgrimage to awakening. It's called Ever the Sea Calls Me Home, because when I was in the next place I went after Swan and this learning this healing was Sardinia, and I spent 5 months there, which is where I started to get these lessons from the sea, like downloads from the divine feminine spoke to me when I was in the sea or on the beach next to the sea and tuning in. So these form a big part of my book, the pilgrimage to these lessons. But it's also my own lessons of, like, you know, faith and trusting in guidance and letting go, and what happens when you let go. And although I was so terrified and really didn't want to go, I ended up in, like, you know, one of the most beautiful places in the world, you know, with beaches everywhere, and it was, yeah, it was amazing. And then lockdown happened and I couldn't leave, but I didn't want to leave anyway, so it was good. But anyway, the rest of it is unfolds in the book. And if people want to know about that, they can look up my website and find out about the book and what stage it's at. I'm finishing in the finishing stages of the final draft. So
Oh,
I hope it
that
will be
is
out by Christmas.
that's incredible. I love that. Will you please say the name of your website so people can find you?
Yeah, it's wilddivinelight.com. That's the
Beautiful.
website. And yeah, so, and then so fast forward some years, I got back, I ended up back in England in 2022. And I at that point had redeveloped my own version of Swan system and called it Divine Light Healing. And I started working through that. And the divine feminine light always came and always showed up for the clients. So then that's when I was using Divine Light Healing mostly. And then I came back to Corfu that October in 2022. And this February, I started doing alchemy, training in alchemy, because Dominique Malley, who's an amazing teacher, had been a friend from in London, how I'd met, you know, 20 years ago or something. And I'd kind of followed her vaguely on Facebook, but I didn't really keep up with her story and we weren't really close. But she had a couple of different trainings that really kind of called to me. And I signed up and attended some of them. And I thought, I really want to know how to teach this. And then just synchronistically, she happened to come to Corfu to look to buy a house here. And that didn't pan out as it was supposed to, because she didn't really want to be here. She wanted to be in Portugal. Anyway, I said to her, look, I love what you're doing. I love the way you work, and I really want to train in this. Can you teach me? And she said, no, I can't possibly teach you. And yeah, and I'm like, oh, disappointed. Okay, fine, that's fine. And then a few months later, she sent an email to all of her people in her news group saying, I've set up the New Earth Academy, New Earth Alchemy Academy, and you can train in alchemy here. And I immediately signed up. So that was February this year. And since then, I've seen 100 clients and helping people for any reason. And I guess most people have like nervous system imbalances, which is related to chronic fatigue and burnout. You know, that's coming as one of the most important things, and trauma. And these are the things that I really, the core root. I always check these core roots of anyone's. I have a kind of like calibration list I go through, and I get the percentages of how much trauma is in the body and the multidimensional matrix, not just including all the energy fields. And even we go from the inner earth level to the cosmic level, and so there's 19 different levels in here, and that's called the multidimensional matrix. If we have more time, I tell you in more detail, but we're running out of time a bit. But
Yes.
so I would heal trauma, past lives, parallel lives, ancestral patterns, and karma. Now, karma is a very big topic, and there's an article on my website which explains why most of my clients are coming to me now. I have karma to clear, and everyone out there in the world generally, because we're moving towards this evolution. The earth is evolving and we are evolving too. We need to make amends and make balance, bring into harmony all our relationships from this lifetime and past. And even today, I just discovered that a woman who I was helping has having all kinds of problems with building work and stagnant energy, and things were kind of not moving forward for her, was related to karma that she needed to resolve. So everyone is having, well, most of my clients are having this needing to resolve karma, and it is quite easy. It's easier if you're obviously. It's the hard thing is to accept that you have also, as well as being a victim and a good person, that the wonderful person that you are, you've also been a perpetrator and done some negative stuff in the past. And that karma comes about by, for instance, this woman today, the problems she was having were exactly mirrored in the past life I was shown that she needed to heal.
Yeah.
So that's how karma works. And I don't know, Swan is an expert on karma, and she might have some other words to say about this. That have a very simplistic view of it, no doubt. She's an amazing, deeply insightful woman. I really am grateful to her for everything she did. So yeah, she's an expert in karma if you want someone else to interview.
Oh my goodness, Cleona, oh my goodness, what a wealth of information and what a rich story. What an amazing journey you have had to become this wonderful person that you are that helps other people help themselves. I really just love it. And I want to respect your time. I know that you have other things that you have to move on to today. And one of my takeaways today is we have to bring into harmony all our relationships. And I'm taking that, I'm hearing that as my relationship with myself, and then my relationships in the world, past, present, and future. And thank you for being here today and for sharing all of this, all of the names that you mentioned. I hope people will look up Swan Montague and Dominique Melody, and
Mali,
please,
Dominique Mali,
Melly.
Mali, Mali.
Thank you, Melly. And please, to our listeners, look up Cleona O'Connell and her work with Wild Divine Light. Is there anything that you would like to say in closing, Cleona?
I just want to say that I am an alchemy healer, and I also, for people in person, do alchemy massage. I am a mentor and I'm a writer. I can help with all of these issues, and it's such a great honor to have had so many clients trusting me and so many amazing teachers. And I want to thank them. I'm so grateful to them, and I'm so grateful to you, Alistair, for giving me this opportunity to come and share my skills and wealth of knowledge. It's such an honor to serve, and I really want to be in service to as many people as possible. So if anyone feels drawn to me, I'm really happy to have a free conversation to see how I can help best. Yeah.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful everything to those who are listening and viewing this. And Cleona, just many, many blessings to you. I look forward to our next conversation.
Thank you so much, Alistair.